Well, it's been 40 years, but the interesting thing about the 40 years is that I really graduated in June of the year 1980, but I started my first student ministry this month, so it qualifies. And although I'll be back in 2 weeks to give the talk, and I'll be coming back every 2 or 3 weeks for the next couple months in order to give a little time of transition here. I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. The talk title's Gratitude. That happened because Brenda reminded me after I sent her the wrong dates for the talk title. I only put 4, and she said, no, there's 5 in the month, so you got to give me a 5th one, and she needed it then. And I thought, well, gratitude. But it's because at the end of this experience that we've shared together this year, I am grateful for you. I'm grateful for the experience we've had together. I'm grateful for everything that we've done. The incredible engagement with your soul evolution, the incredible engagement with your spiritual growth that I've noticed, especially not just on Sunday mornings, but especially on the Tuesday nights. This is really an incredibly engaged and heartfelt congregation. But gratitude is really the thing that changes the ordinary to the miraculous or the extraordinary. The difference between a miracle and an ordinary is that a miracle is an ordinary that has been supercharged with gratitude, with that divine power, the divine intention. And it doesn't necessarily have to fit a religious definition. I remember reading about the physiologist Ivan Pavlov. You've heard of him. He was in the Soviet Union. He was the guy with Pavlov's dog. You ring the bell and the dog salivates, and he was all about conditioning and all these different things. And at one point in the late 20s, early 30s, he was dying. And he knew and they knew it was his last day on earth. And he was very weak. He could barely whisper. But there he was in his, they thought, his deathbed. And they said, we'll do anything for you. What would you like? And he whispered and mumbled, bring me some mud from the river. So they brought him a bucket of mud from the river nearby, and they brought it in the room, and they said, well, what would you like us to do with it? And he said, pour it into my bed. Well, okay, so they poured it into his bed, and they noticed as he picked up some of the mud, and he started making mud pies with it. And for the rest of the day, Pavlov made mud pies and would set them down along the edges of the bed one after another, getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and the fever broke and he got well. Now, there's no belief in that room, at least that was spoken, of any kind of supernatural or religious power, but something happened there, and they asked him, well, why did you want mud? What happened after he got well? And he said, I looked over my life. I realized that what I wanted to experience in my last day, if that's what I was going to experience, was that feeling of gratitude, that feeling of being grateful, that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be alive. I mean, he wasn't necessarily trying to will a healing, but the understanding that, oh my gosh, I am alive, and it's so beautiful. And he thought to himself, when in my life did I ever experience that fully? And it was when he was 4 years old. His family had a picnic by the river, and he could remember himself making mud pies all day. And as he did that work of the soul, he experienced more joy and more gratitude for life than at any other time. And so he went back to that. What did Jesus say, become as a child? And what did he bring to that now moment experience that brought forth his healing? Gratitude. Gratitude, being grateful for life itself. And there's so many things about this story that I could unpack. One of them is that what was the medium through which his healing took place? And it was mud. Mud. The most common, ordinary thing on earth. Earth itself. Mixed in with some water. Most common, ordinary thing. And yet, these two elements were there. I mean, but you think about it. You know, Jesus turning water to wine. Water is the most common thing. Or the loaves and the fish. Bread and fish, dried fish were the two most common things in their culture. And what did he do? He brought his gratitude, his appreciation. He blessed it. Charles Fillmore once said, people make fun of me because I bless my dimes and my nickels and my quarters. I place my appreciation into my pennies. And yet, he said, I'm just doing what I was told to do by these other stories. You put your appreciation into the middle of whatever's there, your gratitude. And what happens? The goodness grows and grows and grows. And I've shared before the story from Eric Butterworth that his widow told me, and it's never been written down in a book because he didn't write about himself. It was when he was 8 years old and his father had abandoned the family. He was a gambling addict, and his mother was the Unity minister in Long Beach. It was during the Depression. Was managed to get through the Depression by house sitting very wealthy mansions, and her kids got to go into very nice schools as a result. So he got a good education in those neighborhoods. But there they were, house sitting, but they didn't have any money. Not only that, they didn't have any food. And one night they were hungry, and he could see how distressed his mother was. And he said to her, "Let's get a basket. We've got a few pennies." And he put the pennies in the basket, and he and his siblings and his mother stood holding onto the basket. And he said, let's give our thanks. Let's give our thanks and bless our pennies and throw it up in the air. And when it comes back down, it'll be increased. All the good will be increased. And his mother said, okay. So they did it. And as soon as it came back down, the doorbell rang, and it was the next door neighbor who knew that they'd had some difficulties. And that next door neighbor had a party that night with catered food, and all of her servants came in with silver tureens and gave them a feast. And it happened in that moment. Dramatic, but how often in our lives do you take the time to say, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God, together? Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. How about doing it with hand motions, because that's what the mud pies were about. It was the feeling of the one time in his life when he felt the most grateful for life, and so he went, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God, together. Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. All this world is calling you to do is to make mud pies. Jesus called it coming into the now moment, being in the kingdom of heaven. Oh, heaven, oh, it's way up in the sky. I'm going to go there when I die, if I do what those people on the stage in the church tell me what to do. No. He never once said anything remotely like that. What did he say? He said it's like a seed that you plant. It's invisible. It's like yeast in some dough, and it grows the good. It's that gratitude that enters into whatever moment you find yourself in, and it grows the good. But you got to say, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God, together. Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Oh, you're such good sports. Thanks for doing that. First service didn't want to do it, but you guys did. You came through for me. So it's that gratitude. So when my son loses his keys, and when he would lose his keys, which is almost as often as his father, he would be all upset. And I'd say, well, have you done it? He says, oh yeah, I know. Thank you, God, for my keys. And he would always find them. Always find them. Giving thanks in the middle of the circumstances that seem to be limiting to us. I remember once I was looking for an apartment, and I'd gone on for weeks. I hadn't found anything. And then I realized, what was it I teach? Okay, I'll do that. So I sat down with the classifieds and I said, thank you, God, for the best apartment that's available right now. And I looked down and there was one. It was just one. It said cottage. I went to it. It was a little Hobbit cottage. I lived in it. It was the most wonderful thing. Right out of the Hobbit. I mean, just this wonderful little place. It was way off. It was in the middle of Pasadena, but it was way off behind a whole bunch of things, surrounded by nature. I'm telling you this because it's so obvious, and we just don't do it. And I'm not talking about getting manifestation of things, but it is about manifestation of things. It's about everything in life. It's about appreciating the now moment and allowing the energy of gratitude to enter into the now moment and then to increase the good. Whatever it is. Whatever it is. I was thinking about that time in my life when I was looking for a car, and I even had a guy in the church. He had a used car lot, and he couldn't find a car for me. And finally I said, thank you, God, and I found this, and one car. It only takes one car, only takes one apartment, and that was the one. Now, I'm sharing this because something will be coming up this week, or something's going on in your life right now. Maybe it's the thing we were talking about during the meditation, that courageous spiritual step that you're taking. But the courageous spiritual step that you're taking has nothing to do, really, with the outer result that you're looking for. It has to do with the expansion of your consciousness through gratitude. Myrtle Fillmore said in the last year of her life, I am so grateful for all those people who got well and whole, and I'm grateful still. But as the years have gone on, I found it's not about the outer healing or result. What really has mattered in every one of those instances is that the people engaged their spirituality and they grew. I engage my spirituality and I grow. Together? I engage my spirituality and I grow. Those people put their gratitude into the middle of those circumstances, in the middle of those situations in life, and the good grew, like the loaves and fish after the Thanksgiving, or taking the most common thing. Now, what's the mud in your life? Mud is messy, isn't it? It's common. It's not spiritual. It doesn't make you feel special. I want to feel special. I want my spiritual practices to make me feel special. I remember something. Suzuki Roshi, who was the founder of Zen Buddhism in the United States, said when your ordinary spiritual practices are a part of your everyday life, then your whole life becomes enlightenment. It's taking that which is right here, right now, and using it as the substance in which the good grows. Not waiting for the circumstances to change, but taking the circumstances just as they are. As Martha Creek says, it's reality, honey. Make friends with it. You make friends with it by putting your gratitude in the middle of the circumstances exactly as they are. I meditate in my office on Sunday mornings. I get there early, and I was meditating this morning. It was all over me. It's all over me. I needed to take all of my ministries in 40 years up the 7 steps. Can you imagine? I did it rather, quickly. But what I found was in that gratitude step, the first step, there was so much to be grateful for. And what I was grateful for was that possibility that was there no matter what the circumstances looked like. Then the thing I had to let go of, the disappointments and difficulties, the unfulfilled hopes and dreams, the things I needed to forgive were all of my expectations and desires that things be different than they were. But the fact that they were exactly as they were, those things that gave me the growth. That doesn't mean that you're supposed to like it. You don't have to like your neighbor. You got to love your neighbor. You don't have to like your job. You put your appreciation in the middle of it. Paul, the Apostle Paul, wrote something that Eric Butterworth once said that he didn't teach for 10 years, his first 10 years of ministry, because he disagreed with it. He thought Paul had it wrong. And it was, in all things give thanks. He thought it's just ridiculous. It's impossible to do that. And then he said, I finally read it, and I realized I've been reading it wrong. It didn't say for all things give thanks. It said in all things give thanks. And then I realized in the middle of whatever's going on, I can always give thanks. There's the substance of good in every situation. Not necessarily the story I tell about it or the thing I don't like about it, but in the middle of it, there's still the substance of good because all things are of God. And he wrote later, Paul wrote later, that all things work together for good. And so there was something that I realized as I thought about that. In all things, give thanks. In all things, give thanks. I don't have to wait for things to change to give thanks. I thought about all these ministries, and I thought, my gosh, I kept, think about it. You go, duh. All these years, I kept waiting for things, trying to get things to change so that I could be thankful for them. And I realize now I just give thanks for things exactly as they are. And that's what I'm grateful for, and then the good expands. The Apostle Paul wrote those words, in all things give thanks, from a prison cell. And I went on to find out that 1/3 of the New Testament was written by that man while he was in prison, unjustly imprisoned. In all things give thanks. And there he was, the Roman Empire had thrown him in prison. It's not fair. It's not right. But what did he do? He placed his gratitude in it, and all this good came forth. All this good comes forth, and then what does it do? It blesses other people. We're looking for peace on earth. We've got to be that peace on earth, and the way we do it is by giving thanks in all things. That doesn't mean we've got to agree with it. Doesn't mean we have to like it. I don't have to like this fly that's buzzing me right now. There's a fly. Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. No, I didn't kill the fly. If somebody's going to get mad, I didn't kill the fly. So, thank you, God, that gratitude is that now moment experience that we place in the middle of whatever it is. And it's the now. It brings us into the now. When you say thank you, you can't be stuck in the past. Jesus said, and you can't be afraid about the future. You know, I'm in the middle of packing and getting ready for a move, and it's so easy to get ahead of yourself, so easy to future, to, oh, what's going to happen, what if? And Jesus said, don't think about tomorrow, let tomorrow think about itself. There's enough trouble for each day. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't make plans, but don't get attached to them. Always be flexible. Things are always going to work out in a way that you never expected. You've got to be flexible in this world. You've got to be able to take things as they come, work with them, move with them, and then let them go and flow. One of the best ways that I found to do this is to say, thank you, God, for a revelation in this. That's kind of a weird word, okay? So what's that mean? Revelation. A revelation means something being revealed. It's the opposite. It's the opposite of control. Something being revealed, allowing something to be revealed, allowing something to just be and come forth. And that's it's very similar to the affirmation of divine order is now established in this. That's another prayer you can use. But as I thought about gratitude, and I thought about what is gratitude, I got in touch with the things that kept me from experiencing gratitude. What keeps you from experiencing gratitude? I got two. One is using my will to force an outcome. That's called control. And as long as I'm doing that, I can't be grateful. I can't experience gratitude because I'm trying to hammer my way through. The other one is completely not engaging my will at all, just kind of sitting down in the middle of the road waiting for a truck to hit me, feeling helpless, hopeless. Both of these extremes don't work. What works? What works is the gratitude that's in the middle, that's neither trying to force your will nor not engage your will at all. It's having a completely engaged heart, being fully engaged yet fully surrendered in terms of outcomes. Every study that I've ever read of healing has found that people who are clear on their intention but are not attached to the outcome get the best results. That sounds kind of like a contradiction. It's a paradox. But being clear in your intention but not locked in to a specific outcome and allowing the process to be what it is. I was thinking about Martin Luther King in the Birmingham jail, and he was writing a letter. He was inspired by Paul. So he wrote this wonderful letter. But he wasn't stuck in that moment going, oh my gosh, I lost. All is lost. It's terrible. It's awful. No. Paul wasn't lost in the ain't it awfuls. They took the long term. They took the long-term view. Whatever's going on in your world or this world, we've got to take the long-term view and not get stuck in the ain't it awfuls, but instead say, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Together. Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. And so what is spiritual growth? Spiritual growth is letting go of those two extremes. On one hand, there's that control, that need for things to be a certain way for us to be okay, to say to the whole world, you better line up the way I want you to line up, Buster, or I'm not going to be happy and then you'll be sorry. And it doesn't work. And the other extreme doesn't work either, which is, I don't know, ain't it awful? That fly keeps buzzing me. It's terrible. I'm going to go home today and I'm going to think about that fly. Whatever that thing is that's going on in your life, don't empower the thing that you don't want to grow. What you put your intention on, your appreciative intention, your grateful intention, is what will grow. That doesn't mean you don't acknowledge and let things be. It's reality. Make friends with it. Acceptance. Surrender. But a surrender that's fully engaged. A surrender that doesn't just sit down in the middle of the road, helpless, hopeless. A surrender that's not trying to force its will through things, but a surrender that says, I know that there's something in this for me. I had a classmate of mine in ministerial school, and whenever something came up for somebody or for himself, he'd say, you know what I always say. He was from Jamaica, and his name was Steve Sams. He'd been in the restaurant business. He ended up being the Kingston, Jamaica minister for years. But he was about 5 feet tall, and he had a voice like like a bass singer. And he said, I always say, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? What's in it for you? And whenever he would engage with that, or he would advise somebody, they would get in touch with that gratitude of there's something in this that I can grow. Myrtle Fillmore explained this to people. It's not about getting a tangible answer. In fact, you'll get a better answer to the extent that you're fully surrendered and fully engaged, and you remember that the whole reason why you're here is to grow spiritually, which means you're letting go of a limitation, which means you're letting go of a false identity. That false I that the people in this room, the people in this congregation, are more highly evolved. We've reached that point for the first time in the entire evolution of our soul, in which we're ready to move past the human limitations that we talk about in our opening statement, past those human limitations into what? Into that higher consciousness, that infinite consciousness that is inside of each one of us. And the only way to experience it is to embrace and engage all the opportunities that life brings to you. Everything is an opportunity. Everything's an opportunity. It doesn't matter what we think about it. It doesn't really care whether we think about this or that. It's always an opportunity. One of the greatest experiences, I've shared it before, in my life that was really formative was hitchhiking around the country 2 summers. And it's like being in the moment. Nobody knows where you are. There weren't any cell phones. I was just in the moment. And I just, every moment, every morning, I would visualize the cupped hands of God, and I would imagine myself with my thumb out like this, with light coming down, and I would say my affirmations. And I had so many adventures. I've shared some of them with you. But it's being in the now moment, and life itself is like that hitchhiking trip, because it's always going to bring something very unusual. Always going to bring something you didn't expect. Always going to challenge you. Always going to push you to uncover potentials and resources within your beingness that you never thought you had. But you, in this lifetime, you came here in this place, in this time. It's the first time in your evolution as a soul where you were ready to take this step, where you were ready to engage with your deeper soul forces, where you were ready to move from being just a human being to being a spiritual being, an infinite being. And how do you do that? By taking the ordinary stuff, the mud, the stuff we don't like, the stuff that we judge, and engaging with it with our whole heart. So let's just close our eyes and open our hearts and take a moment to once again identify your best understanding of this spiritual step. What is your next spiritual step, or that which you're growing through right now? What is it? And if you don't know what it is, just living through each day in a beautiful way, growing, expanding, and remembering when Jesus said, become as a child, making mud pies, saying, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Together, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Being grateful in the now moment for life itself without adding anything to it, without wanting anything else from it, letting the life be the life that's there, and just being grateful for it as it is, with the elements exactly as they are, and experiencing ourselves in that wonder and that gratitude. Thank you, God, that in this moment, in all things, I can give thanks. I can give thanks. I can be grateful. I can be grateful for this moment. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.